sharing a reading experience. I'm reading from a book called What I Heard, and I'm sharing it with you now. I hope you listen and receive something worthwhile from this. This video might inspire you to read what I did. It's my hope that you'll search from the best books and gain information and ideas to help you to become a better person. The more you read, the better you'll think, and the better you think, the more you'll be able to face life's challenges successfully. Moses' history. Moses and his people depart Egypt. These past 40 years, I have happily been a shepherd until God spoke, commanding me to set Israel free from the corruption of Egypt. I know God is my master, and it's He that decides who speaks and who does not. God decides who hears and or not, and who sees or does not. At this time, He did not yet reveal His whole self to me, but He did reveal His name Yahweh, which was unknown to our father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because I have been taught the ways of God by the priest of Midian, my father-in-law, I began teaching the people of Israel right from wrong in hopes they would abandon the ways of Egypt. I taught that if a man caused you to lose an eye, you shouldn't kill him, but only take what is equal and fair, no more than his eye. I taught them that they must not follow the crowd in doing what's wrong, and they must not follow the gods of Egypt. They should not even mention their names. God's cherubim are tasked with guarding God's atonement, which is why the son of the morning's betrayal was so complete and severe. Likewise, Israel was in deep betrayal of protecting the covenants made through Abraham. I anointed high priests and taught them to honor the Sabbath, so Israel could remember that it was only the Lord that made them holy. On the Sabbath day, the people set aside everything to concentrate on remembering the Lord, because I, Moses, knew that man quickly turned away from the ways of God. Through a long series of events, we were able to leave Egypt and its worldly ways. We were to be purified in the desert before returning to our home country. We set up a meeting tent where I spoke to the Lord face to face as one friend speaks to another. But I was not the only one. Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and 70 others saw and talked with the Lord face to face as one man speaks to another. In that holy place, we learned of the Lord's mercy and compassion for all He who elects. I had the ark built to hold God's written words. On top of this ark are the cherubim of mercy and compassion. They're placed at each end on the place of atonement to protect it. I learned of the Lord's jealousy about His relationship with His people. There in the desert place, I learned which ones were willing because their hearts were being stirred by the Lord. I learned all who were eager to help are those that freely give without expecting compensation. I saw the best and worst in men. Moses continued his teachings in Leviticus. I taught Israel many things to bring them back to the Lord. As the people slowly realized their guilt, they acknowledged their shortcomings. Certain things are not good to eat or drink, even if they taste good. Certain things are not good to say and do, even when we feel like saying and doing them. There is a difference between living a clean life and an unclean life. There is a difference between the sacred and the profane. Still, we do wrong, so I showed the people of God how His atonement works. A whole and perfect goat was our sin offering to remove our guilt and to remind us how we become pure so we are right before the Lord. I reminded them that the blood given in exchange for a life makes purification possible. Purification of the people's spirits brings to the community living in purity before the Lord. They were taught not to oppress others and to be generous to the poor and the strangers, so their religion was lived daily. They will know they are pure when they no longer copy the customs of nations around them. I taught them new ways to rejoice, not only in a weekly Sabbath, but yearly festivals such as the festival of the unleavened bread, the celebration of first harvest, the festival of the trumpets, the Day of Atonement, the festival of shelters, and other special celebrations such as the year of Jubilee, which reminded them to proclaim freedom from tyranny and sin. Moses shows the order of things in Numbers. Since we were yet a nation without our father's land, we were required to be on the move. I organized divisions of 2,500 to 6,000 people to take care of needed things. The numbers varied in each organization, but each group was roughly the same size at all times. For example, the Korathite division, made up of priesthood holding Levites, carried things from the tabernacle to our next destination. The Gershonite division performed general service. The Merarite division was in charge of heavy loads. Those older than 50 years of age could be assigned as gatekeepers and guards for the tabernacle, but no longer did heavy work. There were those who were in charge of music. There were those that baked bread with salt, representing the goodness in making covenants. Covenants reminded the people that they must obey the Lord's law instead of following their own desires. Since, unlike the world, all are equal before God, there must be but one law for all. There were those who served as officials and judges. There were those who performed ceremonies. There were supervisors for each capacity of service. The priesthood given to us from God is a gift with the special privilege of service. God gave us manna to eat so the people would be humble when they realized they needed to rely on God for life. If they realized this need in the Lord, our people could trust and grow to be good. Soon my people became tired of endless wandering. As a test to see if the people trusted in God rather than their own arm, I sent spies into the lands of the descendants of Anak. Since the people of Anak were so large, most of the spies came back frightened. Even though the land was good, the people did not believe they could conquer it. I knew then that the people of Israel were not ready because their faith was weak. Moses gives Israel courage in Deuteronomy. I told the people you know as the Anakites, the Emites, the Rephites, the Zamzamites, are powerful men. But have you forgotten what God has done for you? You were all weak slaves to the most powerful nation on earth, yet God brought you out of that land with a strong hand and a powerful arm. Not even the chariots of Egypt could stop you from leaving. Their whole army was destroyed. Even to this day, you were personally shown that God rescues all who trust in him. This should have been enough, but God did more for you. The Lord personally wrote the 10 Commandments for you so you would come off as conquerors and remain free. You were taught to repeat these commandments at home, on the road, when you went to bed, and when you woke up. You were told to tie them to your heads and hands and put them on the posts and gates so you would not forget them. You were taught to love the Lord with all your heart, soul, and might, and teach your children to do the same. You see that all that God does, but you seem to lack understanding. You must respect God in order to thrive and not die out. You were taught that if you have affection for sin, your entire family and those around you would be infected. When you put other things before God, you become weak with corruption. If you have become weak, you must turn around and search for God with all your heart and soul so you will find him, gain strength through him, and be not destroyed. Egypt's culture taught you to satisfy the desires of your flesh and put the things of the world first. When you had your fill, you forgot the Lord your God. The Lord taught you that you could not think of filling your belly with the things of this world. You don't live by eating bread. Rather, you live by every word that comes from the mouth of God. In Egypt, you made offerings to their gods to appease them. But the living God cannot be bribed when you rebel and decline to do his will. He is the great God, the mighty and awesome God who shows no partiality with bribes. He alone is your God, the only one worthy of your praise and service. A righteous person does not base their decisions on what they fear. Do not add to what the Lord tells you. Do not diminish the things he tells you. Do not change anything or rationalize that some things are important while other things are not. Do not be hard hearted and tight fisted with what God wants from you. The Lord requires that you serve him with your whole heart. Be generous with him, and he will be generous with you. Do this, and he will make you successful. You say, these people are too powerful, and you would just rather make peace with them. Don't you recall what happened in Egypt? Egypt welcomed you with open arms and gave you much, even their best lands. Their gifts clouded your judgment. Later, you ended up as their slaves. If you offer peace, what do you think will happen? They will accept your peace, and you will once again become forced labor. You will once again abandon your covenants and be destroyed as a people. Do you want peace with them, or do you want to take back the land the Lord gave to your fathers? With that, Israel had enthusiastic courage and killed all these tribes of giant people. The 13-foot King Og was the last to die. To prevent the people of Israel from imitating corrupt customs, every Hittite, Amorite, Canaanite, Perizzite, Hivite, Jebusite, every one of them that we came across was killed, and soon the whole land feared us. End note: Moses died when he was 120 years old. He had perfect eyesight and was as strong as anyone at the time of his death. In that 120 years, he had three distinct lives. The first 40 years, he lived a privileged life in Egypt. For the next 40 years, he lived as a humble shepherd. There in the desert, he must have been considered poor by the Egyptian standards, but discovered a different kind of richness in the blessing of faith and family. He devoted the last 40 years of his life to help the people of Israel understand their relationship with God. Helen Keller was with her family escaping the summer heat in their mountain cabin. One morning, the frost of the area signaled the approaching winter. Helen, being inspired from the events, wrote The Frost King. Her family and teacher loved the story, and it was published. Someone afterwards accused her of plagiarizing a story called Frost Fairies. Indeed, it was the same storyline and even contained a sentence that was word for word the same as Frost Fairies. However, neither Helen nor her teacher remembered ever coming across the work. There are only so many words to describe what we're thinking about. Additionally, we all seem unaware that every word and phrase we use is because of someone else. Sometimes the source is remembered, but most of the time it isn't. I likewise am influenced by what I hear, see, and read. I take it in, I mix it around a bit, and spew some of it back out. Sometimes I add chocolate sauce with a cherry on top. My notes are the same. I read, but I might come up with more of a conclusion than the author intended. It's my suggestion that if you find this material interesting, you'll read it for yourself to see if you focus in on the same things. My bet is that you'll see something slightly, if not altogether, different. I wish you the best in your happy readings. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, adieu.